The fallacy of composition. This one assumes that what's true for a part of something must be true for the whole. Imagine a delicious pizza. Each slice is yummy, but that doesn't mean you can down the entire pizza in one go without consequences. Just because individual team members are strong players doesn't guarantee the team will win. The fallacy of division. The opposite of composition. This fallacy assumes what's true for the whole must be true for its parts. Being part of a winning team doesn't automatically make you a superstar athlete. A strong company culture doesn't guarantee every employee is happy. The gambler's fallacy. This one assumes past events influence future probabilities in situations that are truly random. Just because a coin landed on its head 5 times in a row doesn't mean the next flip is guaranteed to be tails. Casinos love this fallacy. Tu quoque, you too. An argumentative equivalent of a childish, I know you are, but what am I? It deflects criticism by accusing your opponent of the same thing. Like a kid tattling on another for breaking the rules, they just broke themselves. You say I talk loud? Well, you're yelling. This doesn't address the actual issue. Focus on the argument itself, not a pointless finger-pointing match. 2 wrongs don't make a right, and a tu quoque won't win you a debate. Ad hominem. The low blow of arguments. This fallacy ditches logic for cheap shots. Instead of addressing arguments, it attacks the person making them. Imagine playing chess by shoving your opponent's pieces over. Ineffective and insulting. It comes in flavors like, you're too young to understand that, or only an idiot would believe that. These attacks distract from the real issue. If someone throws an ad hominem, it's a sign their argument might be weak. Respond with logic, not insults. Straw man. Here you misrepresent your opponent's argument to make it easier to attack. You create a straw man version of their argument and then knock it down, but that's not what they actually said. Red herring. This fallacy introduces a seemingly interesting but ultimately irrelevant point to divert attention from the main topic. It's like throwing a smelly fish, the red herring, to distract the hounds from the real trail. Appeal to emotion. This one uses strong emotions like fear, pity, or anger to cloud your judgment and get you to agree without thinking critically. Fear-mongering in advertising is a classic example. Appeal to popularity. Bandwagon. This fallacy tries to pressure you into agreeing because everyone else is doing it. Just because something is popular doesn't mean it's right. Peer pressure much? Appeal to tradition. This one makes us comfortable with the familiar. It's like wearing your lucky socks every game, even if they're full of holes. We cling to the way we've always done things because it feels safe and predictable. But traditions can be outdated and even harmful. Think about foot binding. A painful tradition, thankfully on the decline. Just because something is old doesn't mean it's good. Innovation and progress often require challenging the status quo. Appeal to nature. Appeal to nature plays on our inherent trust in the natural world. Natural often gets equated with healthy or safe, but that's not always the case. Nature is full of amazing things, but also deadly toxins, ferocious predators, and mind-altering substances. Arsenic is a naturally occurring element, but wouldn't win any healthy snack awards. The key takeaway? Don't assume something is good simply because it's natural. Investigate further before blindly trusting the natural label. Appeal to ignorance thrives on the unknown. It fills the gaps in our knowledge with assumptions, often leading to faulty conclusions. There's no evidence ghosts don't exist, so they must be real. Lack of evidence isn't evidence of presence. Maybe ghosts aren't real, or maybe we just haven't figured out how to detect them yet. The important point is, we can't definitively say ghosts exist based on the absence of proof. This fallacy is especially dangerous in scientific discussions, where evidence is the foundation of reliable knowledge. Begging the question. Imagine you're trying to convince someone that a new restaurant is amazing. You say, "This is the best place. They only use the freshest ingredients." But wait, how do you know the ingredients are freshest? Because the restaurant says so? That's begging the question. It assumes the very thing you're trying to prove, the food is amazing, as evidence for itself. You need reviews, awards, or maybe even a sneak peek at their kitchen to back up your claim. Burden of proof. This fallacy is like playing keep away with responsibility in an argument. Let's say you blame your friend for losing your library book. They say, "No way, I never touched it." Prove I did. Uh-oh, the burden of proof lies with the one making the accusation, you in this case. You need some evidence, like seeing your friend with the book last, to really hold them accountable. Affirming the consequent. This fallacy mistakenly assumes that if the conclusion of a conditional statement, the then part, is true, then the hypothesis, the if part, must also be true. Not always. Just because it rained today, the consequent, doesn't mean I definitely washed my car this morning. The hypothesis. Maybe it rained unexpectedly. Denying the antecedent. The opposite of affirming the consequent. This fallacy assumes that if the hypothesis of a conditional statement is false, the conclusion must also be false. Again, not always. Just because I didn't wash my car this morning, denying the antecedent, doesn't mean it won't rain today. The consequent. Maybe it's a dry day. Moving the goalposts. This fallacy involves changing the criteria for what constitutes evidence or success after the fact. Imagine playing a game where the winning score keeps getting higher the closer you get to it. False cause and Texas sharpshooter. This fallacy mistakenly assumes that because one event happened before another, the first event caused the second. Correlation doesn't equal causation. Just because ice cream sales go up in the summer doesn't mean ice cream causes hot weather, although it might be a nice consolation prize. The Texas sharpshooter fallacy is a specific type of false cause, where you retroactively fit a pattern around random data. Imagine a drunkard fires a shotgun everywhere in a barn, then draws a bullseye around the biggest cluster of holes later and claims they were an amazing shot. Loaded question. This fallacy asks a question that presupposes a certain answer, making a fair response difficult. "Have you stopped beating your wife?" is a classic example. How can you answer without admitting guilt? No true Scotsman hinges on making a sweeping generalization about a group, and then rejecting any counterexamples by redefining what it means to be a member of that group. Take the stereotype that all French people are bad at speaking English. This is demonstrably untrue, yet someone might use the fallacy to defend it by saying, well, no true Frenchman would struggle with English. This statement dismisses the many French people who are still learning English or who have accents, and instead creates a narrow, arbitrary definition of a true Frenchman that conveniently excludes the counterexample. Personal incredulity rests on the shaky foundation of personal belief. It dismisses ideas or evidence simply because they seem unbelievable to the individual. For instance, someone might scoff at the idea of deep-sea creatures because the concept seems alien to our everyday experience. However, the vastness and pressure of the ocean depths create unique environments that could harbor life forms far stranger than we can imagine. Just because we haven't seen something doesn't mean it doesn't exist, especially when dealing with the mysteries of the universe. The fallacy. Calling someone out for a fallacy is like pointing at a flickering light and yelling broken light bulb, without checking the switch. Sure, it might be faulty wiring, but it could also be a loose bulb. The key is to explain the specific flaw. Is it a straw man argument or a faulty analogy? Don't be lazy. Diagnose the fallacy and expose the faulty reasoning for a truly powerful response. Slippery slope. This fallacy suggests that one small action will inevitably lead to a chain reaction of increasingly negative consequences. If we allow same-sex marriage, then people will start marrying their pets. Not necessarily. Hasty generalizations, anecdotes. This fallacy makes you the ultimate stereotype machine. Meeting one grumpy waiter doesn't mean all restaurants have bad service. It's like judging an entire pond by one grumpy frog. Base your opinions on solid evidence, not a single anecdote. Avoid sweeping statements and question those all X are Y pronouncements. There's a whole world out there, and it's beautifully diverse. Stay curious, not croakingly judgmental. Faulty analogy. Analogies can be helpful, but only if they're relevant and well constructed. Saying running a country is like riding a bike ignores the many complexities of governing a nation. Equivocation. Equivocation shifts the meaning of a key term in the argument midstream, creating confusion. Taxation is theft. You wouldn't steal from your neighbor, would you? Stealing and taxation are not the same thing, even if the words share a root. False dichotomy, black or white. This fallacy presents a situation as if there are only two options, ignoring the possibility of nuance or a middle ground. You're either with us or against us is a classic example. The world is rarely so black and white. Fallacious appeal to authority. This fallacy assumes someone's expertise in one area automatically qualifies them to speak on another unrelated topic. Just because a celebrity is famous doesn't mean they're a scientific expert on climate change. Expertise matters, but it should be relevant to the topic at hand. Genetic fallacy. This fallacy attacks an idea based on its origin or source, rather than on its merits. Evolution is just a theory that Darwin came up with. The theory of evolution is based on evidence, not just one person's idea. Middle ground fallacy. This fallacy assumes that the truth must always lie somewhere between two extremes. Not always. The statement "murder is bad" doesn't have a reasonable middle ground. There are some issues where compromise simply isn't appropriate. Decision point fallacy, Sorites paradox. This tricky one highlights the difficulty of defining vague concepts with gradual changes. Imagine a pile of sand. When does removing one grain turn the pile into something less than a pile? It's a paradox that challenges our ability to define clear boundaries in certain situations. Phew, that was a lot of fallacies. Remember, fallacies are sneaky. They can masquerade as strong arguments. By being aware of these common pitfalls of logic, you can become a better critical thinker, spot fallacies in everyday situations, and maybe even avoid using them yourself. So next time you encounter a seemingly persuasive argument, take a step back and analyze it. Is it logical? Does it rely on emotions or irrelevant points? By being a critical thinker, you can empower yourself to form your own informed opinions and navigate the world of information a little more wisely. I know this might feel like a mental workout, but trust me, this knowledge will come in handy in countless situations. Whether you're debating politics with your uncle at Thanksgiving dinner, evaluating online marketing claims, or simply trying to have a productive conversation with a friend, understanding fallacies can be a superpower. So keep your eyes peeled for those sneaky buggers in the wild. And remember, critical thinking is cool. Well, there you have it. Thanks for joining me on this crash course in logical fallacies. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button and subscribe to Whiteboard Explainer for more content that will make you smarter, more informed. And if you have a favorite fallacy you want to share, do let us know in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and think critically.